How are you guys going? Hope you guys are having a good time. I just wanted to see how you guys are doing before we begin. Got a few things planned today. It's gonna be a relatively short stream because I got stuff to. There's some stuff that I want to do, and I kind of wanted to give people the opportunity, just give myself the opportunity to at least, you know, just chat, see how you guys are doing. So I wanted to welcome you guys. If you guys haven't done anything, I know life is kind of crazy. It's been hectic. Like, I've been planning stuff, just getting not only like planning out videos, but just generally like getting a lot of shit done. So what I've been kind of rolling with is just some of the, let me lower the volume of the music. Yeah, but yeah, I just wanted to do a short stream discussing a few things. We're gonna be going over kind of what I've been planning on watching this season for anime. I wanted to talk about just some of the things that have been kind of tossing in my mind in terms of life and just overall nonsense. So we're gonna be just doing small things here and there and looking at even some deck building, because I've been kind of messing around with some stuff and trying to figure out ratios for like Weiss Schwarz, for example, and overall I'm kind of content with how things are going. Originally I was going to do some what is it brainstorming today as part of the discussion, but we'll see how things go. So without further ado, let me switch over. We're going to be talking about quite a bit of things. So wait, give me a sec. I'll show you guys what I want to do. So yeah, you can see myself streamception, but I'm just trying to set it up on my end, this nonsense. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about was just some of the anime that have been kind of popping off this season in terms of what to watch. And I'm gonna pull it up also on my other monitor for AniWatch, just so I can kind of go over some of the anime that I am kind of interested in watching. I have 3 categories. It's gonna be going to watch it as a release, like basically following it throughout the season. The second category is I'm gonna probably delay it and just binge through it, and then The others, I'm probably gonna. It didn't catch my interest, whether it be from the trailer or looking through the source material. So we're gonna be going over some of the anime that definitely caught my interest first. Like the one that stood out to me for the current fall season that I'm actually looking forward to watching is Spirit Chronicles Season 2. I'm trying to remember what this one is. This is Blue Lock. Memory serves me. Yep, this is Blue Lock. Sports animes really don't catch me that much, honestly, because once you've seen one, you've kind of seen all of them. I know this one is something that people are looking at. Ao no Hako. We'll probably kind of skip that as well. This one, I'm trying to remember what's on the list because been kind of paying attention to it semi-passively. I know this one. I saw the trailer for it. The Yari Naoshi Reiju wa Ryute Heika wo Koryakuchu. I gotta see what the actual translation is. My brain. Because I remember seeing the trailer for that one. And I just want to make sure. The Do-Over Damsel conquers the Dragon Emperor. That one is kind of interesting, but I might put it as going to watch it as a release, and if I can't keep up with it, it's gonna probably end up on the binge. My attention span tends to be very limited during the season because there's so much things I want to watch. Like for example, the 2.5, the romance with, I think it was called 2.5. I may watch this just because it's kind of interesting, but I might binge it most likely. I like this one too, the 365 Days Till Marriage. I like the premise of it. It's really interesting and it caught my eye. Same with the Don Dadan. Arifureta I'm definitely going to be watching because despite it having really trash animation, like, let's be honest, the animation did get better, but it wasn't that by that much. It really wasn't by that much. But I will continue watching it just because I really like the story. I really freaking love the story of Arifureta. I love vengeance stories. I love especially when the character has to go through shit just to come out on top. So that's something I'm definitely gonna be looking at. Another anime that I'm actually kind of interested in, although it is kind of sus because of the premise. I read the manga. It's not that bad, but yeah, it's still kind of sus. So I'll put it for delay, which is what if my wife becomes a grade schooler. It's still kind of weird. It's really weird, but when you read the premise, when you read the manga, it kind of makes sense. Not kind of makes sense, but it subverts the expectation in a weird way, but it wasn't really that engaging. The other one that I'm actually interested, that I might be watching only because it's getting a Weiss set, the Amagami. But I'm gonna definitely put that on delayed because it's not really like it caught my eye, but there's so many romance animes that I'm just gonna temporarily just wait till it's done. Same with trying to remember the next one. If I remember correctly, it's oh yeah, becoming the worst villainess in history. I may watch it, but I'm most likely gonna put it in the. I'm definitely gonna binge it. Mouse retry. Definitely, I'm gonna be watching this. I'm just a big fan of it. This one, if I remember correctly, this one is. God, this is what happens when there's so much anime to watch. So I'll go back to that one. ReZero definitely is gonna go to the binge, or watch as I go. But it's gonna be kind of like Dragon Ball Daima, where I'd rather kind of just binge it. The Appraiser one didn't really catch my interest, but I might look at it again. My friends keep telling me to do that. Shangri-La Frontier, it didn't catch my eye, but I'm gonna put this right here on the delayed because it didn't catch my eye initially, but it kind of grew on me. Loner, I'm kind of just gonna drop, like, not skip. The Yakuza one seems very interesting, so I'm gonna put it here for now. And if I can't keep up with it, I'm gonna binge it. Same with the Bleach. The Bleach 1000-Year Blood War art. This one didn't really catch my interest. Nageki. Oh, I love this one, the Nageki. Please retire this grieving soul. I remember I watched the first episode of it, and I just instantly kind of died laughing. I'm trying to find it. Where is it? That's not it. One sec. Or what is... Man, some of these images are really hard. This one, I'm probably gonna pass. The Ranma 1/2 one, I am definitely gonna watch this as it goes. There's a couple I'm just gonna straight up skip because it didn't really catch my eye, and when it comes to anime, I'm very, very picky, only because I only get to get a set amount of time a day to just sit down and watch. So if it didn't catch me, it didn't catch me. Like Danmachi, for example, that's definitely gonna go to the binge. I love Danmachi, but it's just so much stuff to do and so much anime to binge. Obviously these ones. Let me just double check. Okay, yeah, this is this one, though, I actually like. I think the anime is called Please Let This Grieving Soul Retire. I actually like it. It really caught my eye. Only because it was just freaking hilarious the first episode. There's quite a bit, like Hanako, I'm gonna be skipping. There's quite a few anime I'm just like either gonna skip, like Banana, Banana the Chi, Uzumaki. I'm not a very horror fan. I think this is a skip. The healer one is interesting, so I'm gonna put it there. This is pretty much skip. Like, if the trailer didn't, like, the Mouse on 29.99 is kind of an if. Tower of God, definitely I'm gonna be putting on the binge. This one, no. Nope. Same with this. This one, the dog one. Like, I watch anime quite a bit, but if it doesn't really catch my interest, I pretty much skip like a lot. Like, if it doesn't catch me on the trailer, like, I'll give it the 3 episode, but because I don't have that much time usually, I binge the rest and then just make a final judgment at the end. Like, at the end of the year. That's how I usually do it. So, like, even the ones that say didn't catch my interest, it will probably catch my interest later down the road. Like, the rest of the anime I'm pretty not familiar with, so I'm not gonna... I'll just tentatively table it here because the Kobayashi one, I know this is this Kobayashi one. If we get it, I'll watch it when it appears. But most of the anime, like 99, like maybe 80 to 90% of it, I table because there's just so much to watch. So like I usually table it and I watch it on my spare time, usually on the weekends or when I'm like just chilling. Just chilling. JJK is, oh my god, that's one of my favorites. JJK is one of my favorite series. Like the ending of the manga was it was very painful in the sense that it like the build up, especially with the if you haven't read the manga, like the last arc, like the last 10 chapters or so, I really liked, but the ending just, it felt very, very lackluster. And trust me, my, like, JJK is just, like, it's an awesome series. It's one of my favorites. I binge watch that series like a motherfucker. Like, pardon my language. But yeah, like a mother. Like I just love that series. In fact, my favorite character in that series, I know it's kind of stereotypical, but only because the author hated this character, is like I like Gojo just because he's a freaking menace, and I don't even like him. And it's not even the overpowered part. It's the fact that he's an asshole. I like characters that are just freaking assholes. Like, that's one of the, like, either assholes or just like plain and simple. That's what you see is what you get. Like, that's why I like Nanami too. Like, Nanami is another character I really enjoy. Like, he's your stereotypical Japanese businessman, but he works like a Gen Zer in the sense that when his time is up, his time is up. Like, he will refuse to work overtime unless it's necessary, absolutely necessary. And like when I like the scene where he literally like he sets alarms for himself to know when to get off work. And like I remember in one of the Mahito fights, he literally says, oh man, looks like I gotta go overtime. Like in all of them, and like even in the first is it Nanami fight or the Mahito? Yeah, Mahito fight. He literally cuts it off because he's like, I don't want to work overtime. Like it's my time off. Like he's your stereotypical like I'm just gonna do what the bare minimum, and that's kind of like for me the very base, especially if you're into like I'm a semi-political person, and Nanami kind of reminds me of that apolitical worker that just says, I don't freaking care, I'm working from clock in and clock out, and that's it. And if you're making me go overtime, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you kind of personality. And then you get frickin' Yuji Itadori, who's also my favorite character. Like that scene when that scene that it still gets me to this day. Like when what's his face? Toto asks him, what type of woman are you into? And then he just simply says, I want a tall woman with a nice big ass. I just sat there going, yep. Mad respect. Mad freaking respect. And then he just had to add in like Jennifer Lawrence. And I just sit there going, like what would have killed me is if you said like Kim Kardashian, because she also got a nice fat ass. But like they had to go for the classics. So I'm like, damn. I was like, especially Toto, like that's one of the reasons why I also like Toto. Toto's just like Yuji, except he's ignorant about it. Like he'll beat the shit out of you if you have boring taste in women. He's like the mixture of Yuji, Quagmire, and Joe Swanson from Family Guy. Like, god dang. It's like, just straight to the point. You want a tall woman with a nice ass. But yeah, kind of like here's a hot take. Let me switch over. I honestly feel like there's nothing wrong with their personality types because they're just regular people that love that just have good taste. Like think about it. Like if you had to choose a friend, would you rather have a friend that's kind of like Fushiguro, that is like generic? Like what I mean by generic is like the generic, like has a generic nice guy taste, and it's so vague and nebulous because he's just trying to say like, I don't care about the topic, which don't get me wrong. If people ask me that, I really don't, I would probably answer like Fushiguro. But when it comes to picking a friend out, if you're like Fushiguro, you kind of want a friend that's like Yuji or Toto, where they're just in your face to say, fuck that shit. I like a woman with a tall woman with a nice ass. Or even like the reverse, like if you have a female friend that's just like, yeah, I like a tall buff as fuck man. Like, even though like, again, I think people who like generic, like super appealing people are kind of shallow, on the shallow side. I give them respect if they're just honest about it, like just blatantly like, I don't give a fuck. Because so many people like to try to be unique, and sometimes by trying to be low-key and unique, you end up just like appearing very boring, just as boring as someone who has a stereotypical taste or stereotypical expectations. But if you're just like honest and just be like, I don't give a flying fuck, that to me is like mad respect, because like you really don't care what people think, and that's something I think a lot of people I think in this world need to like understand. Like if you really want to survive in this world, there is some merit being just straightforward and ignorant sometimes. What I mean by ignorant is just like you don't give a fuck how people view you, that kind of ignorant. But like, sure, you want to be respectful, like no shit, like respect people's identities, whether they're male, cis female, or gender, like or just gender, like non-binary, non-conforming, because that's just general like good taste, like just being a good person. And like to me, that I think that's a lot of times, for example, and this is where I'm gonna get a little political, like this is where I think the left kind of fucks up on when it comes to communication, is that the people that you're talking to aren't like academics. They're not like, when you talk about things like this, they're your typical everyday person that doesn't have the training or literacy to understand like especially if you're talking about it in the academics as like non-binary, non-conforming, gender, like, or even explaining the importance of gender neutral terms. Like, yeah, pronouns, you want to be explicit with them because they're pretty common, like everyday words like he, him, she, her, they, their. That's fine. But you have to remember when you talk about, like, especially with people, is like you have to assume like the majority of the people have the literacy of either a high school graduate or at the middle school level. Like I remember there was like a study on this, like most Americans speak and comprehend at a 7th grade English level. So you have to be kind of careful, like not just careful, but you have to be good at communicating, and that's just frustrating. Like that's why like I try to keep it simple when I talk to like people, when it comes to when they ask me about like, oh, pronouns, how do you deal with like gender non-binary, what is gender identity and all that. I try to be, even though it sucks and it's counterproductive, you kind of have to talk to them as if, not, I'm trying to say that they're dumb, but you have to understand like the majority of the people, like usually people who go to college are students that are in the top maybe 30 or like the most top 30% of their like school population, and the others had to like work their way up from like community college level in order to like get to that level of comprehension. So like you have to understand communication. People just fucking suck at communication. It's true though, like people are just that bad at it. Like if I have to like summarize it, you have to speak to it. So like going back onto the JJK thing, I really do like, that's why I like JJK, is like it boils down like just people into very like easy to understand. Like it does get complex as the story goes, but generally most people are kind of, it's enough where people understand what's going on. It's the same thing like when it comes to examining anime. It's like I like how people like try to rip the religion. Heck, I'm myself, I'm those kind of people that will, but you have to, if you're gonna explain the connections, be prepared to explain it in great detail, or at least in a way that people can understand it. So another thing I think that, how do I say this? Okay. Quick discussion topic. Like, I like. Oh yeah, people always say JJK is freaking crazy, but that's because it's the aesthetic of the series, and like literally, like yeah, a lot of JJK kind of borrows tropes from My Hero Academia, but it also borrows, like, it's weird, like it borrows the energy and pacing that My Hero Academia has, especially the later chapters of My Hero Academia. But what makes JJK different is that it still paints itself in the very Eastern and Buddhist art style, and even like the lore itself, like it coats itself in Buddhism so well. It's like as if you're watching. Kind of reminds me of an Asian version, like a Japanese version of Constantine. If you guys ever watch the DC, like if you've ever heard of that DC comic, like John Constantine, like he's like, it pretty much follows that, like the whole Justice League Dark kind of mindset of the mystical. Like another equivalent could be like Doctor Strange and like Wanda Maximoff. Like it follows that kind of line of thinking, but at least like with Doctor Strange, it hits like the Tibetan Buddhism kind of mindset, but with JJK, it focuses more on the Japan aspect, which I really like, because especially when people do anime about Buddhism, they get so hung up about the Indian, like the Vedic tradition and the Hindu tradition. Like Hinduism and the Vedic tradition, as well as the native version of Buddhism, like the Indian and Tibetan style, that they forget that other cultures like China and Japan, and even to an extent Korea, all have different like takes and representations of Buddhism. So like they get their inner cultures either get overrepresented or muted out. Which is, I think, the issue with anime in a nutshell, is like it tries to reference all the like Asian tradition, like Asian cultures, when Japanese anime should honestly, like, if they're gonna have like stuff about culture, they should highlight it a little bit more about their own in a very unique way. Because a lot of times when they do anime about referencing like Japanese tales or their own culture, it's kind of, how do I describe it? They either take the romance angle of it, like they focus on the romance stories, or they just rip off the names of it and not really like kind of do anything with the lore itself. But that's true with like even the Fate series does this too, to some extent. Like for example, like with the heroic spirits, they follow various different interpretations of each of the heroic spirits, but they try to keep as true to the lore that they can without like deviating from it. But sometimes I always feel like, don't be afraid to deviate. Like some of the most iconic Fate characters are the ones that deviate from, like, not just aesthetically, but even their personality and their a little bit of their in anime lore, like in anime / in visual novel, in light novel, in game lore, deviate from a little bit from the traditional. Like you don't have to always stay faithful with the lore. One, because chances are, when especially with historical like figures, you're gonna get them wrong most of the time, because one, various cultures have different interpretations of that person. Two, you're essentially interpreting very ancient texts, which means you're not going to always get the accurate like representation of who this person is unless you somehow they explicitly describe it. Like that's why like most of the time when I talk about, like, I even tell this to people when they examine history, it's like the benefit of when we had cameras, video cameras and all that is it's very hard. It became very hard to misrepresent. It's still possible to misrepresent past events, but with the invention of like photography and video recording and actual like sound recording, it makes it very hard to misrepresent the past. But those those inventions, it's very easy to unintentionally misrepresent. And that's the struggle that many people, especially when they go into a background in history, you're gonna misrepresent. So like for me, as someone who studied that kind of discipline, when it comes to fiction, it's like I feel like personally, and I don't want to speak for other people's cultures, but it's okay to take some creative liberties, because so long as you reference in good faith some of the source material from which you're lifting this character from, there shouldn't be that much of a problem. But then again, that's just my opinion, my like armchair opinion, not my. So it's like it's kind of silly when people kind of just talk like this. But yeah, like there's a lot of things that go on, and I feel like, how do I describe this? I feel like there's a lot of voices when it comes to discussions, especially about like specific topics, that not a lot of people like tend to focus on listening. Like for example, like even politics, like right now, in my opinion, this is just me like spewing for a little bit. America is kind of fucked in that field. Like we can't have really good political discussions, only because the biggest issue that I feel like gatekeeps America, and it might I know this exists in other countries, but it's very pronounced. And this is just, I know it's an overgeneralization, but it's based on observation, meaningful observation, and you can pretty much see it in the news all the time, is that most people aren't functionally, I'm not saying all, but the most of the loudest voices in politics, and this is only, I think, more apparent on the right. The left, you don't see it that much because, again, a lot of lefties and liberals are very educated. Is that the right is kind of, you see this more on the right, I don't want to overgeneralize, but you see it more on the right, that they're functionally illiterate, in the sense that when you present topics like the economy, immigration, general like foreign policy, domestic policy, social safety nets, and even just like general, if you go issue by issue, even if they are like, when you like, it's true, majority of the people are issue by issue pretty much in favor of a lot of the populist policies. But the problem is they're kind of, when you ask them individually, you have to kind of explain it in a way that they can understand, which is why, and this is again my like, this is why Trump is so appealing to a lot of people, is because he speaks to them at their level. And if I remember correctly, there are people that analyzed his speech patterns, and he speaks like at a 4th grade level. Don't quote me, it might be on a middle school level more accurately, but the fact is, like, charitably, most Americans are at this 7th grade level of literacy, and that's kind of scary. Especially when in order to meaningfully engage in politics, whether it be voting or just having a healthy discussion, it's best to have at least a post high school level of English and literacy, whether it be in your native tongue or in English again, because otherwise you're going to go into arguments where it's going to be like people making declarative statements, and even when you give evidence to the contrary, it ends up just becoming a dead end, and it just makes relationships very rocky, which is one of the reasons why I don't necessarily talk about politics, especially in my own personal circle, is because not everybody is either was lucky enough or privileged enough like I was to have a good enough education and the ability to kind of just read at that level, read at a high, like understand complex issues at a high level. And I won't even consider myself very like high level intelligent. It's just enough to understand when experts tell you something. I can generally understand what they're saying. I'm not an expert. If you ask me about economics, I can tell you a little bit about it, but I'm not an economist. That's not my specialty. But I can at least listen, and when an economist were to speak to me, I can follow along and then ask meaningful questions. I think that's the general basis, like I feel like is the baseline if you want to engage in politics. You should be able to be like listen to what an expert or a politician is saying, and be able to actually ask meaningful clarifying questions or even counterpoints. But since most people just go oversimplify and biting, it's why the famous saying, like in American politics, it's all about vibes. Because most people it's either they're not that well informed and a bit able to understand what's going on, or the topic is so complex that they don't have the patience to sit down and listen to it. That's another issue too, is like most people don't have that patience. That's why, like, and I'm gonna stress this like 100%. I think everybody has the ability to reach the level of literacy that I believe is needed. It's just, one, do we have the time? Do people have the time to sit down and actually engage it meaningfully? And two, our society needs to like really stress the importance of and be able to explain it to everybody else why it's important to have just basic literacy. Because I've seen it so many times when people ask me like about the current events. What do you think this means? How many times I had family members even ask me about what's going on in the Middle East, because even though they hear it on the news, they don't necessarily understand what's going on in terms of what's the context behind it. And I think that's the issue. It's like a lot of people don't have the ability to just contextually understand what's going on. And that's not their fault. Most people like shouldn't have to be paying attention to this every day, but just having enough, like, again, the ability to just say, hey, what do you mean? And it's really hard in this digital age. Like, it's really hard in this digital age to be very literate in politics when you have tons of conflicting informations going on. And I appreciate a lot of like organizations doing the fact checking, but the problem is the fact checking is only useful if people can understand why they're wrong. Like, even if you point it out to them and explain it, they need to be able to understand what you just said. And I think that's the issue. A lot of people are just simply bad at communication. And it's kind of sad. Like, this is some of the reasons why like American politics is just straight up garbage. Is communication, literacy and communication is all over the place. Like the level of that. So that's enough of me rambling about politics. I don't like doing that because one, yeah, I love I mainly want to talk about anime and manga, but Frick. And this is all because of JJK, so damn it, Ghost. Damn it, Ghost. I'm kidding, Ghost. I love you. You're fine. But like, but again, it's just like, it's so weird. It's just so weird how so many people can understand, like, can comprehend media, but they don't realize, like, if you can take that skill and just apply it to your, like, understanding politics, that level of, like, analysis, we would be having a lot more, like, the Overton window that we have right now would be much more desirable, where it's comfortable to talk about politics. But it's just weird. How many of you guys think like I do, like, Americans are both afraid and kind of dumb, when not dumb like stupid, but like they have this weird hang up about politics. They're either afraid, or because they don't want to like take the time to understand it, they avoid it. Because I think that's just the issue with America, is like, we love to talk about it, like beat our chests for it, but we're so scared of like having honest dialogues that we intentionally, like, either intentionally or unintentionally, just get into very, what's that word, antagonizing situations. And it's just strange. It's like Americans are so, like, they I see it all the time where I live. Like, every time I go, there's people flying their party flags, their candidate flags. But when it comes to actually honestly talking about it in a constructive way, they either avoid it and go into their echo chambers, or they just have this weird hang up about it. And it's frustrating. It really is. It's weird. Like you're right, Ghost. They're weird. It's like people are just weird in general about these kind of things. So, okay. I'm gonna change the subject quick. So, here's a hot take. I think a lot of people don't understand when they watch anime. I think they don't, and this is just like a hot take. This is not a serious take. It's kind of just like my hot take. Like, when it comes to anime, especially ones where they make reference to like other cultures or other pieces of literature, I think a lot of people don't see like the author's intent behind it. It's not always just a reference. Oh, here, let me reference this religion, or let me reference this literature. I feel like they either get down to like, they do the balls deep, the anime balls deep kind of mindset, where they analyze up the wazoo of it in a very cringe fashion, or when they do analyze it, they don't try to connect it back. Like, they don't connect the two things, the source that the anime is referencing and the anime itself. Like, there's always that disconnect, and if they do make that connection, it's always just like in favor of the anime's plot, and not understanding like why the anime did that in the first place. I feel like that's kind of just, it's just weird for me. Like, for example, during the time when like Naruto was at its peak, like during the Fourth Great Ninja War, when, especially when you look at the character Madara, for example, most people like look at it as like the power fantasy, the guy that is like doing this for the war, but they don't or rather, I think they don't they don't examine the other sides of him. Like, for example, like what makes Madara such an appealing character also is that he hits kind of the themes that you see in the works of Nietzsche. Like, the nihilism that Madara has is very Nietzsche-like, where, and I might even do an analysis of this in a later, like in a separate video. Like, there's this idea of eternal reoccurrence or eternal occurrence. I forget the term I have. It's off the top. I'm just ripping from the top of my head. But like, where certain kind of like, the main idea is that suffering is always cyclical. You're always going to be entering a cycle of suffering and despair, and that is, and we become more aware of that as we realize that thanks to the Enlightenment and the scientific revolution, we've demystified the idea of an omnipotent being. So because we do that, when we see all the struggles and people go through, and you can probably see it in like stories that talk about suffering and overcoming, is that it's always in this perpetual cycle. It always it comes and goes, like this period of suffering, overcoming, suffering, overcoming, and they're always recurring and occurring and recurring. And that's one of the reasons why, like, a character like Madara is such, like, comes to this conclusion, is that the cycle just never freaking stops. And that what he's trying to do is basically what Nietzsche's saying is like the goal of the Übermensch, is to overcome this understanding of like existential dread and nihilism and find new meaning. But again, I think most people do understand it. It's just the connections aren't always explicit. Like, that's why like one of my favorite animes is Psycho-Pass, because they're very explicit when they make the references to philosophers, because they're essentially, the characters are carrying out that dialogue for us. Whew. Normally I don't like talking like this because it's kind of cringe, but it allows me to kind of just vomit my ideas all on the table. Like, that's why I like anime. Like, I wanted to switch it up this time around and focus more on discussing, kind of just spitballing ideas and what comes into mind, because I spend a lot of time just dissecting my decks, but I never really get to kind of just talk about the other things that pop up in my head, especially when it relates to anime. And that's something I'm going to be changing in this channel, is, and I'll probably clip this part too, is I want to be able to do, like as I stated in my trailer for the channel, but I want to intentionally like also like focus on those three things: trading card games, anime, and discussions, because it's one of the reasons why I still like producing videos. It's just, again, my overcritical ass tends to like pick up an idea and just mull it over and then just not commit to releasing it. Like, even the Oshinoko video that I released yesterday, I was like, I don't know if I should record this. Like sometimes and that's one of the reasons why, one of the biggest reasons why I tend to go on those like mini hiatus, is because I get stuck on like these ideas, and I'm like, do I really want to do it? do I really want to talk about this? Because it's just so like, because I have a habit of like taking things at the, like, even in my conversations with people, I love to like just take it to the stratosphere, but not everybody's interested in that kind of like abstract talking. And I don't like to just be like political live streamers who just live stream about politics. I want to talk about other things, and I'm not like it's just, yeah, that's what happens when you become a creative. Like, you get stuck in your own head for so long that you just don't pull the freaking trigger, and that's my issue. Like, I have all these wonderful ideas in my head, but I freaking hesitate to pull the fucking trigger. It's kind of, and it also didn't help during the time when I was working, is because I don't want to talk about what my previous job was, but like, I didn't want people like at the time finding out. Even now, I'm still kind of like, that would be kind of cringe. I'd cringe, but it's something I have to deal with, and it's something I'm learning to just like unlearn and just roll with it and just say fuck it. And that's something, and like, if for those who have a lot of social anxiety like I do, there comes a point where you just need to say to yourself, fuck it, I'm gonna take the risk. And even if I cringe, or like my cringe reflexes kick in, you just gotta, like, that's something I think that I do find amazing about ironically Donald Trump, is that he doesn't give two shits. And that's something that I think many people who have social anxiety can, I'm not saying to follow him to a T, but like to imitate, is that you got to be learned to just confident enough to be comfortable in your own skin and not give a shit what people think. And that's something I have that I'm still working on, is like, don't be afraid to just post your ideas. Just be careful how you frame it, because you don't want to be canceled, because most people don't know how to handle being canceled. I know that. There's so many people that can't handle being canceled. Like, and it's ironic, like the strategies that you see it often on the most ignorant people, which is, don't play into it. Just don't give a fuck. And that usually works when dealing with being canceled. It's just, you just gotta don't give a fuck sometimes. And that's kind of unique. That takes a unique level of willpower to just power through the cringe. But yeah, I want to do more discussions like this, like just sit down and just like let my brain like vomit onto the mic, because like, I love scripted content, don't get me wrong, but my brain likes to edit in between, and I feel like riffing seems very easier for me than just following a script. Although I will say having like a general plan helps, but that's besides the point. Let's see. What else do I want to talk about? Because this is kind of, it's kind of getting freaking interesting. Give me a sec. Trying to think. Frick. My brain's just fried. But I think one thing I will say is this. For anybody, no matter what age you are, whether you be a teenager or an adult, I think and this is a guy. This is coming from a guy who's lived a quite not a really long life, but a very interesting life. Don't be afraid to kind of explore things. Like, explore your interests, explore your passions, and don't be ashamed of it. But again, I don't want to sound self-help, like, and this is coming from a guy who's large and just all around. Like, I don't like being self-helpy because it becomes preachy. Anyway, I think we're gonna go into something a little bit interesting. So 1 second. 1 second. I just need to change something. Be right back. Sorry, I needed a small break. Anyway, so going back to, like, oh, okay. So let me answer the first two parts. So the part about being canceled, Ghost, I think you're right. It really does depend on what you're being canceled on. But at the same time, I think the bigger one is how you handle it. Because like look at the ones that are in the manosphere, for example. Like, even when tons of evidence gets piled up on that reveal how shitty they are, they still maintain a very loyal fan base. And my thing is, it's because of the confidence. People with a lot of confidence can and know how to just navigate those kind of accusations tend to survive it. And also, what does help them, like, and personally, I believe in this idea that people, like, you shouldn't punish people for their past takes, even if they are cringe the takes or like cancelable, if that's the word, because everybody is capable of change. I'm part of that category that believe that everybody can change their opinions, their values. They can become better. And I'm one good example of that, because when I was a teenager, I was a pretty much right-wing conservative. But after meeting different people, I wouldn't say the right people, just different people, listening to different perspectives, and just overall just examining the past in different angles and examining people from different perspectives and angles, it moved me away from that ideology. And for some people, it's possible. And you can, and I'll gladly clip this part. Like, I do think people have the capacity for change, even if they have cringe takes, bad takes, or just overall takes that you personally disagree with. And trust me, there are people who I vehemently disagree with. Some of them are my family members, but I know people can change. Just like how people can develop more empathetic takes, they can also change for the worse. So you have to be just, again, it really depends. And then as for the Zenless Zone Zero, I've dabbled in that game, but I've played so many Hoyoverse games. In fact, I could show you. I don't know if I want to do it, but maybe I can show you what I call my whales log, because I whale a lot in the past. And like I've played, like for Hoyoverse games, the ones that I still have on me are Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail, and I haven't logged into either of them for a while. Like I know, like for example, in Genshin Impact, they're now in Natlan, and the last time I played was I was finishing up I just finished the Fontaine storyline. Honkai Star Rail, oh god. Pardon. But for Honkai Star Rail, for example, I only just cleared this Xianzhou, and I downloaded that game from the very fucking beginning. I literally dropped it after beating Fantilia. Like I like the aesthetics, but it was just, how do I say this? Hoyoverse really doesn't do a good job at supporting their games. They did a good job with Honkai Star Rail, but Genshin, which I actually liked, like the characters and all that and the story, they really don't treat their player base well. They're kind of like Konami in that aspect. Like for Yu-Gi-Oh, like Konami in the TCG side, they don't really care about their players that much. And it's one of the reasons why, like, even though I still have like Yu-Gi-Oh cards, I don't actively try to play the game. Like I try to keep my decks relatively up to date with the current meta. But I don't actively seek out that game. I don't actively seek to play the game. I'll play it casually, but because Konami like really doesn't, like, the reprints are in a good way to help their player base, but it's reactive, it's not proactive, which means that they only somewhat care about their player base. If they really cared about their player base, they would have intentionally built that in, like in their TCG infrastructure, like how they do with the OCG. Like, have you seen, like, let me show you. Like the new maxi, quote unquote maxi of the deck. Is $155. Like, it's $155 per copy. Like, and many other like YouTubers like Monkey Fight TCG kind of brings this up. It's like, this is one of the reasons why, like, I don't like Yu-Gi-Oh as much as I did in the past, which was it's been more and more anti-consumer and very much like try to bait people into buying product in order to make their bottom line. When a good example of a company that does a very similar model to Yu-Gi-Oh, which is like the idea that the Japanese side and the Western side have completely different looking sets, is Pokemon. where Pokemon, like, instead of having like Japan, they break down what would be our main sets into smaller sets, which is fine for Japan side. They combine it here in Pokemon, but what they at least do for many of the Pokemons, especially the ones that they know are going to be good, like the chase ones, with the exception of some cards, they print it in multiple rarities. Like, for example, you'll have the base rarity, you have a full art, or what they would consider ultra rare. You'll have a golden rare, or what their equivalent of a ghost rare, and then they'll have the alternative art, the special illustration rare now, what they call it. And this is only for a select few of cards. Most of the time they keep everything very accessible to rarities, but because there's, for example, I don't have one on me. Let me pull up here. Let me use Pokemon for example. Let me switch it to Pokemon. Iono's the perfect example. Iono has different printings. They always have different like rarities built within. You have the Cosmo, you have like a Cosmo promo, tournament promo, the base uncommon, you have reverse holo foil, you have the full art, promo full art, and then special illustration rare. So like you'll have people like me who like to, like, for Pokemon, that's one of the few games I like to sometimes min-max rarity depending on the art. For me, it's depending on the art, but it's accessible. Like, you have different rarities, but you have those different rarities, they're still the same card. It's just one is basic, one is kind of foiled, one is kind of blinged out, and one is just baller blinger. Like, if Yu-Gi-Oh had like that kind of rarity distribution, it wouldn't have that many people just pissed off at them, and they wouldn't have to feel the need to reprint so much things to the ground. And that's why like if they just made their cards accessible in different rarities to begin with, and they did in the past for some cards, but if they did it for especially their chase cards, stores wouldn't lose money on Yu-Gi-Oh product, because why? They'll know that people want to buy it. There are people who are just going to be satisfied with the base rarity, but I know so many motherfuckers just want to bling their deck out and stand out as like the baller. I'm one of those for Pokemon, but that's only for supporters and trainers. But I know those motherfuckers that they exist. Like, we used to call them rarity H word, but I don't want to say it anymore because it's honestly not a good. It was never good in the past. It's not good now, but you kind of catch my drift. They love to bling their decks out like a motherfucker. Even One Piece, like, as much as I like the game mechanics in One Piece, their printings suck. Like, God, I don't even want to say the word, but they just suck. Like, the fact that their distributions and stuff is just nuts. Thank you, Ghost. But yeah, it's just like donkey. It's just garbage sometimes, the TCGs, because they like, it's like they can't learn, like, be very friendly to the player base that they market to. They always want to like drain every little dollar they can from their player bases. But honestly, like, again, that's one of the reasons why I'm still a trading card game player, even though like I don't like spending that much money on it. It's just there's like this weird appeal it has, and it's just the nature of it. honestly, it's like just the very nature of the beast that is trading card games. But yeah, it's again, it's just the nature of the beast that we deal with. That's what makes us trading card player. Like I even like jokingly will say like trading card games is a mental illness. Anyway, I'm probably gonna cut the stream very soon, as I want to prep some videos, and I do want to talk about some other things on a separate video. So I think I'll cut it off for now in a bit, but just a quick thing. Make sure you guys subscribe. I'm gonna try to make the streams more like intentional, like in terms of planning ahead for these and working on like publicizing it, because honestly I love doing these things. Now I understand like why people stream like non-stop. Like they still do stream. It's kind of fun doing it, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I will be scheduling my next one in the near future, like next week. It's probably gonna be next week Friday. I'm gonna try to do it earlier, but usually I try to do between 5 to 7 my time. But I might try to see if I can do like get to the 5 o'clock time, so I can have more time to just chill and hang with you guys and talk about stuff, and also hopefully get more people to watch. But yeah, I think we'll cut it off from here. I will be doing another video very soon.